Hi everyone. I'll just put on my headset here. I see some of you were expecting this and already are in. So thanks for that. Welcome to the first few of you there, Mr. and Grish and Michael, Shamila. Okay, so Joe Biden has been elected the 46th president of the USA. It's great news. It's the best decision for the country. I firmly believe that. From 2 points of view, it's the best decision. Number one is, and frankly, primarily, which is a shame that we have to talk this way, but primarily, it's a good thing that Trump is going to be removed from office. That is an important thing, and it's not to be underestimated. There have only been three one-term presidents prior to this, and Trump will be the fourth one-term president. It's a damning indictment of the damage that he's done, and it's the right decision to remove him because he is a con man, he's a fool, he's a liar. He's a disgusting human being in more ways than I can imagine. So I'm very pleased to see the back of him, and I hope we don't have to discuss him for very much more. There is a little bit more that he can do before he leaves, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the country has spoken. 75 million people voted for Biden. Around about 70 million people voted for Trump. And I've had some comments from people about that and what that means. And again, we will need to discuss that. But 75 million people recognize the decency in Joe Biden, and that and this really was a vote about changing the character of the USA back to what it should be. We're not an unkind country. We're not a cruel, racist, homophobic, bigoted, anti-immigrant country. We're not that way. And even though 70 million people voted for a man that represents all of those ideas that I just mentioned as bad things, that doesn't mean that 70 million people hate immigrants or hate, gays or, it doesn't mean that. Sometimes people make a vote based on what they have been told, and they're wrong in my opinion. They don't understand, but many of Trump's voters are, and I've said this before, they're uneducated old white people. That's his demographic, right? They're people that don't have a college education. They're older demographic. They're older people. They're generally white. And that doesn't represent the USA anymore, and that's not who we are as a nation. So it's not surprising that people have voted against that, and they voted for a man as the president that was the previous vice president under Barack Obama, who's a very decent man. He's just a very genuine, decent man. We also have as vice president Kamala Harris, who is an extremely accomplished mixed race woman, a very intelligent, very, very bright woman. And this is kind of a representation even in Joe's VP pick. She's of Indian and black descent. She was born in America, obviously. She's married to a Jewish white man. She's got children of mixed race, obviously. And Kamala Harris looks more like the future. Joe Biden is from an older time, absolutely, and he looks like today's sort of old guard, as it were. But Kamala Harris is what a lot of people here look like, and the race issue doesn't matter. So that's a great thing. That's very encouraging. As a father of three daughters, I'm thrilled that a woman is in that position. I come from the UK. In 1979, Margaret Thatcher, was elected Prime Minister over there. The fact that it's taken another 40 years, to get to the point where we have, a VP of the USA that's a woman is amazing to me. But there you go. USA is slow in some of its behaviors. So there you go. So I'm going to answer some questions a little bit later, but I do want to just sort of address some of the questions in advance, which I think that you're going to have. So let's just talk through a few of those things. So, firstly, what's happened this morning is that some of the news outlets, the Associated Press, Fox News, CNN, they've all been watching the election votes being counted over the past few days. And when Pennsylvania got to a point which is, an unsurpassable lead, that's when the news outlets have called the election. They've sort of predicted the election to be Joe Biden as the winner. It actually isn't official yet. Okay, it won't be made official for another week or so, and certainly it could be 2 weeks. Certainly, President Trump will challenge this in every way he possibly can. He's already in court in various states trying to challenge things. It's been sad and funny at the same time watching the confusion that he has sown. He's been telling people, stop the count, which is completely undemocratic. We count all the votes in this country. That's how it works. That's just the democracy process in a decent country. He was saying stop the count over there, but then in other states where the count was going in his direction, he's like finish the count over there, finish the count over there, stop the count over here. It's like his supporters have just been going nuts. With the conflicting messages and the conflicting logic. He's tried to undermine the election process by sowing doubt on the election process. But none of it's going to matter. He's not going to be able to overturn this result. So, Trump will be Trump. He's going to go on and he's going to bitch and whine. And maybe they'll have to drag him out of the White House, in January. Perhaps they will. I honestly don't know. He's not going to go and just, he's not going to go quietly. He's just not that sort of guy. He's just totally about him, right? So, he's going to challenge this result for sure. He's going to, drag this out in courts, but the result is obvious. The votes are still being counted, but the result is growing for Biden. The lead is growing for Biden. So, so there you go. Biden will take office on January 20th, 2021. Between now and January 20th, Trump is still president of the USA and still has the full power to do anything he wants during that time. So it's a little bit of a nervous time because he can do all sorts of things. Can he extend? These are going to be the questions that are going to be asked. Can he extend the ban? Yes, he can. And I've heard Charles Cook and Greg Siskin, for example, say that they assume he will extend the ban, the ban that is due to end on December 31st. I'm in two minds about that. I don't know, I don't know what Trump's mentality is going to be. He will be spiteful. He'll be angry. He's going to be obviously frustrated and upset. He probably believes himself to be the best president ever. He wasn't, but he probably believes that way. And he probably believes that he's been cheated in some way. He hasn't, but he'll believe that. And so he may be spitefully sort of, extending the bans for all we know. He may not. He may just spend the time between now and January 20th golfing or doing whatever the hell he wants to do. I don't really care. But I think we need to build that into our understanding. And you need to build that into your understanding, particularly those of you that have visas from DV 2020, which are set to expire around about March, right? And I'm going to get to that situation specifically and talk about that in a few moments. For DV 2021, Joe Biden won't be the president of the USA until January 20th, and he's not going to come in on day one and fix everything in DV 2020 and fix everything in DV 2021. There are many problems that he's got to fix in the USA, and his sole purpose in life is not to get the diversity visa lottery winners, into a fair position. That's not his main issue. We're having massive infections from COVID right now. There's a COVID crisis. There's 1,000 Americans a day dying. The economy is in shatters because 20 million people are still unemployed because of the COVID crisis and Trump's handling of it. So Biden will have to implement a system of checking, COVID checking, and vaccinations, etc., and all sorts of things will have to come. But vaccinations are not round the corner, despite what Trump has been saying. Um, so there's going to be a lot of work to actually just get the country safe again, safe and economically prosperous. It's going to take time. It's going to be a very difficult presidency. I'm actually worried for Joe in a way that he's going to have so many challenges ahead that he's inheriting a complete mess. In fact, which is very similar to what he inherited as vice president when Barack Obama became president in 2008, because Bush at that time, if you'll remember, had crashed the economy of the USA, bringing with it the economies all over the world. And Obama had to have what was then the biggest bailout in history to try and stabilize the American economy at that time. He did, and over an 8-year process, they achieved enormous success, which Trump inherited the tailwind of that rebuilding of the economy. But it was challenging. I'm quite sure it was challenging. So it's going to be difficult, and the economy is far worse shattered than it was at that point. The coronavirus is far more challenging and dangerous to people in America than we've ever seen before, right? So it's going to be tough. But Joe Biden has made statements that that he's going to remove things like the Muslim ban. He specifically talked about the Muslim ban. He hasn't, as far as I know, talked about the presidential proclamations 10014 and 52, etc., which are the sort of temporary bans that run out December 31st, perhaps. He hasn't talked specifically about those, but I would not be at all surprised if he removed those, very quickly when he comes to power in January 20th. Okay, just want to keep on reiterating January 20th, right? So I think he's going to remove those things, right? There will be 10 objective voter fraud. Oh God. Honestly, so if people are in America and they've been part of this process, there's not been voter fraud over here. We're not, banana republic. The only person that thinks that is Trump, and there's no credible evidence of voter fraud. So please, let's not be moronic in our comments. 10 objective, whatever your name is. So anyway. So change will begin to happen from January 20th. Normally, presidents have a 100-day agenda. So within the first 100 days, they want to do this and this and this and this. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if we get the proclamations removed within the first week or so. So let's say, just assume that by the end of January, the Muslim ban and the presidential proclamation on travel due to COVID, etc., just the immigrant ban, the 10014. Let's assume those are removed by the end of January. That's about the timeline I'm expecting. What will that mean, to the process that we've got? Well, okay. If you were in DV 2020 and you had and you've got your visa, you were issued the visa or reissued a visa in the last days of September, then if I were you, I would not try and travel between now and the 31st of December at this point. Now, some people have done that, as I've explained before on videos before. Some people have done that and they've succeeded. And in some cases, that success was wrong. They shouldn't have been able to enter, but they did. They were allowed to board the plane, and when they arrived in the USA, the Customs and Border Patrol looked at the valid visa, sometimes with an annotation saying subject to PP, 10014, sometimes without the annotation. And the CBP officers, the Border Patrol officers, allowed the people into the country, which means that those people are now lawful permanent residents and that won't be taken away from them. Okay, so some people have done that, but I don't suggest you do that during the period between now and December 31st because it's a hassle, right? Um, it's just a hassle. Sometimes you'll book, the airline won't let you on the plane. You're going to go through aggravation. You're going to get your mindset all sort of worked up for nothing, right? So, so I don't recommend you do that. I also don't recommend you try and book between the first, for January 1st, right? Because at this time, we don't know what Trump is going to do. If you want to wait for a few weeks and see whether Trump extends the 10014 or not, that might be a smart move, right? But don't book now, assuming that he's not going to extend, because again, it's just going to create hassle for you. And the reality is, you're going to be able to enter in February or in March. So why go through the hassle, right? The other thing is that rushing into the country now, which is in COVID crisis during the winter, which is the worst time to come to the USA in terms of, if you think of flu-like pandemics, they tend to be worse in the winter. Why are you going to come here and go through that hassle, etc., during the middle of winter? It doesn't make sense. You're better off to wait until February. February is still cold in many parts of the states, but at least it's sort of leading towards the better weather. And and once people aren't all locked indoors, because flu gets worse in the winter because people are having to be together indoors, right? I live in California, so it's an outdoor place all year round. But in many of the states in the USA, they've already got snow, they've already got terrible weather, and so people are forced to come together in enclosed environments, and that's where airborne respiratory illnesses like COVID tend to pass along, right? So why are you going to fight and go through hassle and go through possibly wasted money on flights and that sort of thing to get here now? It doesn't make sense. Um, okay, just ignore that. So it does make sense, and I suggest you don't do that. Just wait until February. That would be my honest suggestion, unless you have a really pressing need to get here, either now or in January, right? And then, okay, you can weigh up the risks of travel. You won't lose your immigrant visa. It's not the way it works. They don't take it away from you if you try to get in and then get turned around. It's just it just so it's not a risk of that. It's just a risk of being turned around. I have known of cases where they've been turned around at the airport, at the arrival airport, and sent back on the next flight. That's not funny. That's not fun. And if you've got kids and everything else, that's horrific. So don't start your American journey that way. That would be my suggestion. If people are obviously going to wonder whether we can get more than the 9,000 visas. I'm still talking about DV 2020. I'm going to talk about DV 2021 and DV 2022, etc. But going back to DV 2020, Judge Mehta made his decision and has allocated 9,000 visas. And his decision was just to reserve those visas, by the way. His final decision is still not made yet. But Biden being the president will change things, somewhat, and the prospect of Biden becoming the president will begin to change the mentality amongst the lawyers, amongst the administration, etc., because they know decency is coming, right? So that's going to begin to change things a little bit, but it won't have immediate impact. So, it's not for sure that this means that everything for DV 2020 will be fine. It also, the lawyers have talked about trying to recover more than the 9,000 visas, right? But you have to understand that's not a legal option. That's a political option. That would require change of law, which would mean the Congress would have to agree that. Now, there's going to be lobbying, there's going to be persuasion. That's what lobbying is: persuasion of the lawmakers, of the government, to try and do something to help DV 2020. But if I had to guess, I would say that's a low chance of happening compared to the chance for the 9,000 visas. And the 9,000 visas are probably going to go to the people that were on the verge of getting their their appointments that had been scheduled, that were in AP, um, or that have low case numbers. And so, we don't know who's going to get the 9,000 visas. We don't know for sure that anyone's going to get the 9,000 visas, but but my best guess at the moment is that it will go to, largely it will go to the cases in ready status, because those cases are at the embassy already, and perhaps some additional cases that are in category 4, which are ready for scheduling, perhaps some of those based on low case numbers. That's probably about it. So, that's where we stand with DV 2020. DV 2021 is being impacted still by the ban, and as of today, we don't know for sure how KCC are going to start scheduling interviews. What would be normal is that January interviews would be scheduled in November, right, in this month. Because of the change in leadership, the impending change of leadership, there might be more chance of that happening than there was, let's say, yesterday, right, or a week ago. Because maybe they'll say, look, we know Biden's going to remove the ban, so let's just go ahead and schedule the interviews. But bear in mind, up to now, KCC have been operating in the way that they've been told, and not scheduled interviews, where they felt they couldn't issue that visa. So that's going to be something we'll still have to deal with, right? We'll have to figure out whether they schedule interviews in November for January interviews, right, and sending the 2NLs in November, or whether they wait until January to start sending the 2NLs. If it's the latter case, we'll lose more time, and that will begin to threaten the ability to process all of the DV 2021 cases within the time period. The lawyers will certainly fight that. They will probably try and get an extension similar to the one that's been gained for DV 2020, perhaps an extension beyond September 30th, or a reservation of visas as we get to near to that point. But again, I don't think anybody can guarantee that that's going to work. At some point, we will have to accept that the reality is, we have to accept that DV 2020 was impacted by COVID, and DV 2021 will be impacted by COVID. COVID is a reality. It's not, it's not just about bad politicians and bad government decisions, etc. It's about a real crisis. We know it's real, and I've been saying now since March, early March, I've been telling people, be careful. This is a real thing, so. Trump chose to mislead the whole country about that, even though he knew he had been told the information back in January, but he chose to lie about it. And the reality is he's it's just the way it is. Can I just remove this idiot? Put user in time, hide this user. Yeah, let's get rid of this moron 10 objective if we can. That would be nice. I'm hoping that means I'm hiding it so I don't have to read this moron's crap, but I'm hoping you guys don't have to read that moron's crap either. But anyway, but anyway, it's an example of the sort of morons that we have in America. There are some, and I don't know where 10 objective lives, but he's obviously, there are morons all over the world. What can I say? Anyway, so that's where we stand in terms of DV 2021 as well as DV 2020. I hope that's clear, and I'll in a moment I'm going to start answering some questions about that. DV 2022 is still ongoing. Couple of quick questions I get constantly asked on that. If I'm a DV 2020 winner and I've got a visa, can I apply for DV 2022? Yep, you can. Anybody can apply for DV 2022. There's no harm in applying. It doesn't affect your DV 2020 or your DV 2021 case. You can apply, right? Everyone should. So there's around about 3 days left. So do that this weekend. Why not? There's no harm in it. It doesn't cost you anything. So go ahead and do it. I do know that people have been struggling to enter the lottery. So my advice typically is restart your computer. Make sure you use one browser session. If that browser doesn't work, try a different browser. So if you've been using, I don't know, Chrome, try using Firefox or Internet Explorer or Edge or something else, right? Only have, though, one browser session, one browser window open and only one browser, right? So only have one open at a time and restart your computer each time. Make sure your network connection is good and enter your details as quickly as you can. Go through the process as quickly as you can, but making sure you're accurate, right? If you take 15 minutes to fill in that form, it's too long, right? You've got to be quicker than that. It should really only take you 5-6 minutes. So it's simple. Okay, so let's persistence is key, says S. Rackle Productions. Absolutely, right. So let me scroll back up and see if there's any interesting questions here. So let's see. Somalia, Tanzania in the ban, says Tabo Gordon. Right. So Somalia, Tanzania, these countries are affected by the Muslim ban, as I call it, the travel ban. Biden has specifically talked about that ban and said he's going to remove it. How quickly he will do it, I don't know. Whether it'll be day one, week one, I don't know. But that's not going to be until January 20th. He can't do anything about that right now. Okay. I've talked about DV 2021 appointments. When will they start? I hope that we'll have appointments in January, but it might be later than that. We'll have to see. By the way, this is an important point. I want to be clear about this. Biden winning is bad news for DV 2021 high case numbers in Asia and Africa, and to some extent in Europe. Right? Why? Why is that? Why? People haven't really understand what I've said about that. Well, there are around about, I've just from the top of my head, I don't have the numbers to hand, but there are around about 8,000 people, let's say, for example, in Asia, right, who up to now are affected by the Muslim ban. So we're talking about people from Iran, people from Yemen, and so on, right? Those people have little to no chance of processing their cases right now under the Muslim ban, as has been the case for over a year now, right? That we've had the Muslim ban in place. When Biden comes in and removes that ban, all of those people, particularly the Iranians, for example, who have low case numbers, will suddenly be able to process their cases. And whilst it's going to be difficult and challenging for them for COVID, for security, in places like Yemen where it's still probably an unsecure situation, or for traveling to other places, whilst it will be difficult, there will be a lot more people that will suddenly be able to get processed, right? So that's a problem for high case numbers, because effectively a high case number in Asia, for example, just went further back to the back of the line. That's why that's why it will be a problem for high case numbers in some of those some of those regions, right? So that's particularly the case in Asia. By far, that's the biggest case. 8,000 people are now going to be included in the process that were previously blocked. It will, to some extent, be the same way in Africa and to some extent in Europe, but it doesn't affect Oceania and South America at all. So I hope that's clear. So finally, we're so happy. That's right. Congratulations, lots of congratulations for President Biden. That's wonderful. Right. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through these, so I'm sorry if I'm probably missing some good questions here, but I'm just scrolling through to see if I can find some good questions. Um, This is an important point Nader. Nader Nabil is pointing out. I know a lot of immigrants voted for Trump because they're against miscarriage and teaching their kids in school no God, or at least that's what they think. Okay, it's a great point, and it was a point I wanted to make in a sense. And you're not actually talking about miscarriage; you're talking about abortion, Nadir. I agree with you. A lot of people have a singular issue. So 70 million people voted for Trump. That doesn't mean that 70 million people are anti-immigrant, racist, homophobe, lunatics. That might mean that they've got one or two political positions beyond which they can't see anything beyond that. So Trump, who famously switched his position on abortion, for example, he was pro-abortion prior to running for president. He's now anti-abortion because that's the Republican Party's position. So on abortion, for example, you might feel very strongly on abortion, particularly if you hold religious beliefs about abortion, or if you just don't like the fact that it means taking a life, right? I mean, that's it's a very difficult subject. Adults should be able to have these conversations. I don't appreciate religious influence at all in any political discussion. I think that's fundamentally wrong, because we're not all of the same religion. So your religious beliefs, etc., should not impact my life because I don't care about your religion, right? That's my fundamental point there. Okay, so abortion, for example, is a very strong topic that a lot of people get their leaning to, against abortion from religious organizations and teachings. So they may decide that that the Democratic Party, who are, I wouldn't say pro-abortion, but who accept abortion, um, you know that might be enough to sway it for some of those people. So of the 70 million people, they may have been swayed that way. As for teaching their kids in school no God, that's actually the law of the land. We're not supposed to teach our kids that there's God in schools unless those schools are formed by religious organizations. And again, if I'm paying my tax dollars, and I pay a lot of tax, believe me, if I'm paying my tax dollars to fund a school, um, I don't want those kids to be educated, that there is only one religion. When I was educated in England, I was taught about many religions, a broad cross section of religions. I was not taught that any one of them was right or wrong or anything else, and I very much appreciated the understanding of all religions. But but that's not to say that I want to pay my tax dollars to have any kids educated that there is only one religion. That's just fundamentally wrong. So you should know about religions, but not be encouraged to take a particular religion. That's my perspective. But I agree with you, Nader. Some other people might see that differently, and therefore may have voted with the Republican Party because of that. It's unfortunate that some people can't get beyond their religious beliefs and infect their political beliefs with their religion. So there you go. Patricia says she's sad that Trump lost. Oh dear. Can't get through to everyone, can you? What about travel ban? So I've talked about the subject to PP10014. Mo, you're asking about that. Hopefully that covered that. Summary, I think I've given that. Let's see, what else? What other questions are in here? Safo Samuel says the election was rigged. Honestly, you're listening to a moron, and if you repeat the words of a moron, that makes you feel and seem like a moron, right? So, dear Brit, if I present in front of CBP January 1 and Trump extend proclamation, do I risk that my visa will be cancelled or take the ban for life, or just be asked to return when the proclamation will end? Yes, it's the latter. You would, even if you try to enter, and the ban is in place, and they return you, they're not going to take your immigrant visa away. They'll simply say, come back later after the ban. Okay, so that's you haven't got a concern there. Let's see. Oh dear, that's loads of questions. I've scanned through so many here. It's probably good questions that I'm missing out here. If you have a genuine question that I haven't yet answered in this video, and you want to re-ask it, please go ahead and type that in now, and I'll start lower down the thread here. Okay, Jose Luis says, how Biden being president affects Charles Cook current litigation. Do you think, do you see more chances of success? I think I'll let Charles Cook talk about that. I do think that to an extent, Charles Cook was buying an insurance policy by, by having the litigation. I think he's well aware that, the ban may be extended, and so he was beginning to fight to avoid that happening. He's also fighting to try and return the rights of people that are already affected. But basically, with Biden winning, things will start to normalize. Things will start to get better, right? But it will take a little bit of time, and perhaps people don't want to wait that time. Okay, so then the lawsuit will possibly help, but it's not for certain that Charles Cook and others can win. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I do think they're extraordinarily good and committed lawyers. All of the lawyers that have been involved in this, from the Ayla teams, the Charles Cook team, Curtis Morrison, Rafael Arena, they're all extraordinary people. I really have come to appreciate the lawyers in a better light. To be very honest with you, lawyers, even these lawyers that we're talking about now, don't understand the lottery process as well as I do, for example. And they don't understand it as well as many of you do. But they are very they're very intelligent, and they're able to fight, and I found their optimism in these things extraordinary. They don't fight for, they don't fight battles they don't think they can win. They really believe they can win these things. So and I find that very uplifting. So so I appreciate them very much. And I've done all I can to support them with background information about the DV lottery, and to try and correct some of the misunderstandings that there have been. But ultimately they are decent people. They're good lawyers. And I'm thrilled that they've taken up the cause for, fighting for you guys. Okay, so let's go see. Let's see, please, highlights. Right, so Derek, I did talk about Tanzania. We'll have to wait and see. Some of the there have been so many bans, so many reasons for Trump to ban this country and that country and these people. What started off as Muslim bans morphed into, and was clearly, by the way, Muslim bans by Trump, right? It was clearly a racist, religious, bigoted perspective. That morphed into sort of a security concern, and then morphed into some countries being banned because their governments were not behaving very well and sharing information, for example. So at some point, some of those bans or restrictions on companies may continue, because some of it made sense. Not much of it, but some of it made sense, right? So there may be some lingering effects. I really can't predict that at the moment, so I don't want to be too specific, but I think broadly speaking, most of the bans, and certainly the ignorant bans, will just be removed, pretty quickly. So that's how I think it will work. DV 2021, I think I've talked about. It is important that we, Tay Fada, I'm answering your question here. It is important that we understand that time is not on our side. If we can start interviews in January for DV 2021, then we have 9 months. And we know that they can issue about 5 to 6,000 visas a month in a busy month. So 9 months is enough to issue all of the visas. That's my simple calculation. But literally, that math depends on a very high performance of all the embassies around the world. It depends on KCC scheduling a lot of cases, etc., and then keeping up that pace for the full period of the time. It's going to be hard to do. So the likelihood is that with 9 months, there could be a small impact where there isn't enough time to process all of the cases. Having said that, if that 9 months gets reduced to 8 months or 7 months because they don't send out 2NLs until January, then that will become much harder, and much riskier. Okay, so we've yet to see what happens. This month is particularly important. In my mind, they really need to send out 2NLs in November, and if they don't, then we're going to begin to see a broad impact on DV 2021. Randa, you're asking about the closed consulates like Cairo's. The alternatives for people affected by that is to go to other consulates that are open. America is going through an increasingly bad COVID disaster right now. Other countries may be less or more affected, and so I can't sort of speak broadly about about every embassy should be open by this date or whatever. That's just not possible. There will be some embassies that won't open, and so you will have the opportunity to ask for interviews somewhere else if your embassy is closed. So but that does take time. It didn't work out so well. I mean, it worked pretty well, actually, I have to say. In the last 3 weeks of September, some of the embassies were extraordinary, and really worked hard to accommodate people from other countries, and they literally opened their doors and their arms to help people to try and get them processed. There were some embassies that did really well. Other embassies were just disgraceful, and stayed closed when they should be open, and didn't communicate with people where people deserved a communication at least. So we'll have to see what happens, but hopefully normalcy will return in a lot of these countries. I hope so. Yis Liu is asking, is 10 years bar punishment out of status counted on the day you enter the US, or it's rejected on interview? So, oh, I see. So, if you're counting 10 years, so it comes down to a sort of a very, if you're on a 10-year bar for previously overstaying in the USA, and frankly, that's that was a daft thing to do. But anyway, if you were dealing with that, that will normally be considered at the point of interview. And if you're under a bar, they'll put you on administrative processing until that bar ends. Okay, so you can't say, well, give me the visa today, and I promise I won't enter until the end of the bar. They actually won't issue the visa on the day of interview. They'll wait until you're unbarred. So that's how that will work. Navina David, I understand that high case numbers in 2020 have low chances into the 9,000 visas, but what if you're one of the named plaintiffs? The lawyers are trying their best. Yeah, in some cases, the named plaintiffs might get some priority. Most of the named cases, apart from Curtis Morrison's later case, Kennedy case, already got served, already got helped. And so it's really, we're only talking about the Kennedy case. I don't know for 100% certainty what will happen about that. That case was late to be processed in a way, but it was before the end of the year. So it may be that Judge Mehta treats that in the same way as he treated the other named plaintiffs, and those people would get prioritized. So we'll have to see. I can't be certain. Right. Oh man, I've just lost my place. I saw a message there from Bundix. Hi, Bundix. Cosmos Rono. Now my question for Brit Simon. My son handed some documents on September 30th and was given back his passport and medicals. He was told DV 2020 is over. The case officer didn't speak to him. Now what? So now, if he was, if the 9,000 visas, are approved to be issued, then someone who had an interview and was placed on AP should get high priority to just get reissued. But we'll have to wait and see how that goes, Cosmos. We can't be certain. So we'll see. I see Bundix has already answered Nada's question. That's correct. Bundix is correct. Your number is quite low. Laura Gill, I don't understand, why would somebody who won the DV lottery one year would reapply the following year? Could you explain that? Yeah, because right now, even if you're holding on to a DV 2020 visa, you might be concerned that you're not going to be able to enter the USA. We could get another lockdown for COVID reasons, for example. So yeah, there's a risk. So it costs you nothing, and there is no risk of entering DV 2022. So why not do it? It's just a wise thing to sort of hedge your bets, as it's called. So that's why, Laura. It doesn't cost anything, doesn't cause any problems. So why not? And if you're DV 2021, you definitely should be re-entering DV 2022, because there's a lot can happen between now and then. Until you've got the visa in your hand, you're not safe. And right now, you're not even safe then because of COVID and everything else. Sharik is asking, if the travel ban on Iran is lifted, will it make Asia cases more likely to not be processed? I think I've already addressed that. It's going to be an increased risk for high case numbers in Asia, yes. And that, I mean, it's almost a certainty. Victor says, you've got a 2020 visa issued. Curtis wrote that the government appealed all of Judge Mehta's orders. That's true. And the decision about it will be late January. Do you think it'll be wise to wait with entry? Yes, there's no problem. If you've already got the visa, you're not going to have that taken away from you. So don't worry about that. If I don't believe Curtis is telling anybody that there's a risk to the visas that have already been issued. I don't believe that, and that's not the case. Yehen Kokolov, what if our interview was supposed to be in country A and last month we have moved to country B? Do you think we'll have an opportunity to change the country of interview? Yes, you can do that. You contact KCC. You ask them to unlock your DS260 and you change your address to the new country, country B. You then resubmit your DS260 and you ask them, KCC, to change your interview embassy location, because only they can do that after the initial selection. Even when your form is unlocked, you can't change your embassy. So that's how you do it. No problem there. Humphrey, how about the green card lottery? That's what we're talking about. Good question. Not. Okay, Sulav Dakal says AS, so 2020 AS 10.5, right. I can't tell you specifically about what case numbers. It's less about the case number than the position that you're in. If you were already scheduled and you had an appointment at the embassy, or if you're on AP or something like that, then you're going to have a better chance. I believe it's not just about the case number; it will be about the position you're in as well. Okay. Tilahun Debru says, what would happen if somebody missed a passport number while filling in DV 2022? We don't know for sure about this. So I would expect that person to be disqualified. If you're claiming that you're unable to get a passport, and then lo and behold, you're able to get a passport, then you're likely to be disqualified. However, we don't know. We haven't seen any cases processed yet with the new passport rules. So we don't know for 100% certainty that cases in that position will be disqualified. So we have to wait and see about that. But I think it's certainly a pretty stupid thing to apply for DV 2022 if you don't have your passport. Get your passport and apply. And if you don't have your passport, don't apply. Don't put yourself through that pain. So there you go. Amir says, could you please once again let me know what is the high case number for ASA region in DV 2021? I read your website and I'm still struggling. Oh man, I did videos about this, Amir. I don't know why you're struggling. Um, we don't know what the highest case number to be interviewed will be, right? I don't have a prediction for that for all the reasons that I've explained in previous videos. There's way too much going on for any predictions to be made. In terms of the highest case numbers that have been informed that they were selectees, in Asia, I think it's about 35, 38,000 or something along those lines. But that doesn't mean that all of those case numbers are going to go through. And because of Biden's election, probably there's a much increased risk for high case numbers in Asia, particularly. Okay. Rwand is saying my case number is 2021 AS 10K. Should I be worried for not? So AS 10K is not particularly high, but it won't be interviewed in March. So you're just going to have to be patient and see what happens. But as I say, with Iran in particular, a lot of the Iranian cases will be under Asia 10,000. They have a high percentage of winners under in low case numbers. So there is going to be an impact. And I'm not saying that Asia 10K won't get interviewed, but it's a little bit more risky than it was a week ago, right? Litmas Guzar says, I sent the documents 2 months ago, DV 2021, but didn't receive the email yet. Should I be worried? Yeah, they're processing slower because normally the last DV 2020 work would have been done by KCC in July, right? So they schedule the last interviews for DV 2020 in July. That would be the September interviews, and that meant that they spent August and September working on DV 2021. That's what would normally have happened. In reality, this year, they have been impacted by COVID. They're working from home. Things are obviously impacted. Then they were told in early September to stop everything they were doing on DV 2021 and focus all of their efforts on DV 2020 again. And they did that. They worked very hard. That would have continued until early October. Because they would have been counting and organizing the cases coming back from the embassies that were issued at the last minute. And so they only restarted work in October. But again, they're still affected by the COVID impacts. And so things are going slower this year. For DV 2021. So just imagine that you're going to have to be patient. And if you've got a high case number, you don't have to worry about it, for now, because it doesn't matter how quickly you process your DS-260 or submit your documents, you still have to wait for your case number in all cases. There's no other way around that, right? So it's not a question of rushing in your documents and or your DS-260 and you go to the front of the line. That's not how it works. Okay, so just be patient. This is a DV 2020 people or anyone else will tell you this is a test of patience. Nelson Godwin says, I'm a 2021 winner and case number is 53,000. Do you think it's bad? What's bad about 53,000 is you haven't told me the region, Nelson. I need the region. I can't understand why people can't get this through. There is an Asia case number one and an Africa case number one and a Europe case number one, right? So telling me your case number 53,000 doesn't mean anything. So you just wasted 2 minutes of your time and mine. Bethelhem. I filled DV 2022 program, but I was laughed on the photo. Do you think I will be disqualified? No, I don't think so. I mean, you had a chance to take the photo again. I don't know why you didn't do that, but anyway, no, they won't disqualify you for a smile. I mean, if you're, laughing like a lunatic, maybe they will, but no. I mean, presumably you use some common sense about that. Intellectual Antwi says my case number is AF11X 3X. Should I be worried? That's not a high case number. Intellectual Antwi, no. So no, you shouldn't be worried. There is no way in the world that number doesn't get current. Okay, go through a couple more of these. Akum, we've spoken many times, Akum. But anyway, I've gotten my DV 2020 visa. My visa is expired on 3rd of January 2020. Okay. So you've already booked your flight on the 1st of January. Is there any possibility that that it could be extended by Trump? Yes, it could be extended by Trump, but I totally understand why you've booked your flight for the 1st of January. It's a great pity you didn't get a new medical and get a longer expiration. That's a shame. But fingers crossed, let's hope that Trump doesn't extend the ban. If he does, I would say try your entry anyway, right? In your particular case, there's a downside. You might fly all that way and get refused, right? If the ban is extended. But I don't think that's a bad gamble, put it like that. So I would, stay with your travel plans on the 1st of January, but I wouldn't be suggesting that to us, but it's because you've got a 3rd of January expiration date. Svaga Agrav says 48 hours window between issues and take effect. This means that we have minimum 24 hours to enter USA. Oh no, that's just nonsense. Svaga, that's not true. Trump could extend the ban. I've heard this before, actually. People think that they can sneak in between two bans. That's not really the case at all. It's perfectly possible that he could extend the ban as a continuation of the existing ban, just extend the date. So that's not going to work. So no. Alex says, congratulations, elated on the Biden-Harris win. Me too. AF9 XXX, you're fine. Assuming nothing terrible. I mean, DV 2020 has been a disastrous year in so many ways. 2020 has. Hopefully, 2021 isn't going to be as disastrous. Hopefully, the COVID crisis, we get control of that in 2021. But I'm hoping, yes, the world will be a better place without Trump at the helm. I agree with you there, Alex. So fingers crossed. Hesham, do you think that Trump could renew his order after 31st December up to the 20th of January? Absolutely. He would. He could extend it. He wouldn't just extend it till the 20th of January. He would leave it as an active presidential proclamation. So it'll be up to Biden to remove it at that point. But we don't know if he's going to do that on day one or whether it'll be week one or exactly when. Johnson, can I get your email? No, I tend not to give my email because I prefer to answer questions in public. So if one person asks me a question by email and I answer it, I've helped one person. If I answer a question in public, then I've helped many more people. So that's what I do. Sharik, sorry, I know lots of questions like these, but what is your opinion regarding AS19XXX? So honestly, I think because of Biden's win, that's the beginning of a risky region. So we don't know, but considering the reduced amount of time we got for processing, considering the increased numbers of 8,000 people, are about to be unbanned, right? Then I think that's a little bit risky. But I can't say with certainty where the cutoff is going to be. It could be above that number or below. I don't know. All right. Badal says my case number is AS42, so it's about 4,200. Should I be worried about that? No, that's a great number. Maria is asking, will Biden's win affect the DV lottery? Yeah, I'm explaining how it could affect it, Maria. Chuta May says, please, what could be the possible first number one case number for Africa? It could be AF1, right? So that's what it could be. Because all regions have their own numbering starting at 1. Sammy Sam, dear Brit, due in January 20. Okay, so for Eritrea, Myanmar, Tanzania, etc., those countries are likely to be unbanned. Some of the countries, I think it's Eritrea, right, where the government was uncooperative. Some of those bans might stay in place, or there might be other measures put in place, restrictions put in place, but it wouldn't be a sort of a carte blanche ban like Trump did. It would be something a bit more nuanced, perhaps. perhaps, but we have to wait and see. Okay, I have my case number AF 50,000. Is there a chance to get my interview? You just have to wait and see, Cafu. You have to wait and see. I can't be sure where the cutoff will be, if there is a cutoff. Um, there are so many factors. So I've explained these in other videos, but um, the time of processing is one factor. COVID is impacting embassies being opening. That's another factor. Um, the economy in the USA is impacted terribly, and that might mean that that immigrants are not so keen to come to America at the moment. That might reduce the number of people interested in processing their cases. So, and there's legal stuff going on, and there's bans that have got to be removed, and the election, we now know the result of that. But there's many factors that just mean it's impossible for us to predict where cutoffs will be. So I will often answer very low case numbers and say, yeah, that's fine. Asia 4,200, that's a low number. I don't need to think about that. Africa 10,000, Africa 20,000, don't need to think about that, right? But when it gets into higher numbers, then I'll start to give you more cautious answers, and it's because I don't know. Nobody knows, and believe me, I know the math of DV lottery. I know it back to front. I know it very well. I can predict numbers mathematically in the DV lottery, but there are so many factors here that are nothing to do with math that that for that reason we can't predict anything, right? um Okay. Monsuru is saying, how can I know if I won the DV and where should I check? You check at dvlottery.state.gov/ESC. The instructions are right there. You just have to look, right? Let's scroll down again. Maria, I answered your question already. Vadim. So Vadim is asking, will I see on the site where the Form DS was filled that email is sent from KCC? Maybe status change. No, you won't see that. What at the moment, there's no way to check status of cases. In January, DV 2021 cases will be checkable in the CEAC system, CEAC system. And we can already see DV 2020 cases in there, but those cases only become available on January the 1st each year. That does tell you status, but it's not very useful. It doesn't tell you, oh, we sent you an email today or something like that. It's not very useful. So it just tells you whether you're issued or whether you're disqualified, refused, whether you're at NVC, which means waiting. It just tells you that. So you just have to be patient in this process, Vadim. Okay. Diana, you're a 2020 winner. I've not received your appointment letter for interview due to COVID. Is there any chance that I will receive it, please? I'm getting a lot of these emails from people that just don't seem to understand, what the process was. The normal cutoff each year is September 30th. Once that point is met, in a normal year, the process stops right there. There's no further activity. It doesn't matter whether you've been interviewed, or not. You're not going to get any further activity. In this year, there's a conversation going on about DV 2020 only because of the lawsuits, right? And so the lawsuits might get a few more cases. But if you didn't receive your appointment letter for an interview, you're in what I call category 4 or 5. One or the other, I don't know. And your chances are low of receiving one of these 9,000 reserve visas. Okay, so Diana, I hope you've entered DV 2022. You can't lose hope totally on DV 2020 yet, but if you've got a high case number and if you hadn't already been appointed for an interview, then then your chances are very low. Okay. Okay. Next one. Abdisalan, you live in Somalia, especially the self-declared state of Somaliland. I'm stateless without a passport. Okay, so if you're stateless, if you're truly stateless, based on where you were born, your state, then you can apply for the lottery as stateless, right? But it has to be considered stateless by the US government, right? Not just something you believe. So fact matter, hello Brit, what about the DV 2020? I think I've discussed that. I think I need now to refer you to the beginning of the video. I've covered that several times. Mohammed, can I edit my DV 2022 application? I made some mistakes. No, you can't. Can't edit it. What mistakes can you make? It's your name, your email address, your your date of birth. I mean, honestly, this you got one you got one job to fill in a very simple form. If you can't do that, then I'm sorry. You know, I don't think America is for you, to be honest. Um, but no, you can't edit it, I'm afraid. What you can do, if you're selected, and selection is by no means certain, then you can resolve minor mistakes, right? So if you put an extra letter in your surname or something like that by mistake, as long as they don't think you were trying to commit fraud, then you can be approved. Minor mistakes on date of birth, but if you've got the month, the year, and the day and the day wrong on your date of birth, and your name's wrong, and you've got what you're saying, you made some mistakes. Some mistakes to me is unforgivable, and if they're important, some mistakes, more than one mistake. I mean, come on, you either weren't paying attention, or there's something else going on. So you have to wait and see if you're selected. Okay. At it, you're asking whether there's going to be new lawsuits for DV 2021. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see how processing goes and whether people get a chance. I don't know yet. Okay. I think I've probably covered most of these questions. People are asking questions that I've answered before. I don't see anything new question-wise, right? So I'm hoping I covered that. So I'm going to call it a day here. We're at about an hour or so. It's a long video already. I hope that was useful to you. The main thing is Joe Biden's the winner. That's fantastic news. It's great news for most of you. It will be bad news for some of you as well. But those people, who are affected by Joe Biden's win in a bad way, the high case numbers from some of the regions, well, you'll have to take comfort in the fact that it's a return to being more fair, because banning people because of their religious beliefs, etc., is not fair. And I say that as a person that's not religious, as I've mentioned on this video before. I'm not religious, but I certainly would not discriminate against someone based on their religion or the color of their skin or their sexual identity or anything else. So so to me, yes, okay, it's tough luck to some people for sure that Biden won, because high case numbers will be badly affected. But that's just the way it is. Okay. So okay, everybody. Costco's. I like Costco. I go there and shop a lot, so I'm going to answer this question from Costco. Please answer me. Will President Biden face challenges in the Congress? Well, that's a good question. He's going to face some challenges because of the different branches of American politics, right? So you've got the House, you've got the Senate, and you've got the the president. They're sort of three three coordinated sort of groups, as it were. The president has his perspective, but the president is not a king. And so a law has to go through the House, has to go through the Senate, and be signed by the president. All three of them, right, have to agree. And it's a democratic process. And it's going to be difficult for Joe Biden to work with all of these groups, particularly if it looks like he's not going to have a majority in the Senate. But Biden has spent 47 years negotiating through that world of politics and doing deals and reaching compromises. So it'll be something he's able to cope with better than most, right? So we'll see how how he does. If your question was, will he be challenged because of some nutcases talking about illegitimate voting or whatever, that's not for Congress, that's not for the Senate to decide. That's for the law. and there's no evidence. There's literally no evidence that is giving any credence to what Trump is saying. So there's not going to be a challenge based on that. Okay, so right. So there's a couple of other questions. So Outboss is going to have a fit if I don't answer him, I think. If I win the DV 2022, do I have to move to the US immediately, or can you stay in your country for a while? When you go for your interview, it's a very slow process out, Bros. So the DV 2022 results will be announced in May. Interviews will happen between October of 2021 and September 30th of 2022. When you have your interview and you're approved, you're given a visa which has 6 months validity, and you have to enter the USA within that 6-month period. So it could be 2023 until some people are entering the USA. So it's not a quick process, so don't worry about that. Sweshi, hello Sweshi. I got an email from KCC confirming that my documents were received and are okay. So I guess you'll wait for for my interview. I guess my interview will be in January. Your take? My take is I don't know that any interviews will be in January, but if there are some interviews in January, yeah, your number is low enough to be one of them, and you're ready for interviews. So yeah, you've got a chance. We'll have to see. Mm. Yeah, Costco. I'm happy to talk about the political system. Um, you know, so we can come back and discuss that another time. Perhaps I'll create a video about it explaining how it all works. It's an interesting system. It's taken from the British system, but modified by the Americans 240 years ago, and it works pretty well. I don't love the Electoral College. I explained in a video just recently. I don't like the Electoral College, but I do understand why it exists. But in this election, Joe Biden won both the Electoral College, which is the most important thing, and also won the popular vote. He got more votes than Trump by a margin of about 5 million, probably be about 6 million by the time we finish. So that's, he won it both ways. So, it's a totally legitimate win. Yeah, good. You watched it. Thanks, Costco. All right. So I wish I could talk two ways. I know you guys must get frustrated with typing, etc., but it would be so nice if I could take video questions or something. But never mind. Okay, a bunch of questions coming through here. Just seeing if there's any new types of questions here. Anna Dema has asked, why do you only answer one person, yet many people are asking you questions? It's because they're all flying by, Anne. I'm a human, I'm not a robot. And sometimes I find a question interesting and I answer that one. And I find other questions which have been repeated 48 times in the last 5 minutes, and I decide not to answer that one. I'm a human, I make human decisions. But look, I answered your question. If you'd have asked a question that had something a bit more use to it, that might have been more useful. So there you go. Kenya's celebrating Joe Biden's victory. That's great. So his father was from Kenya, right? So that's a fantastic thing, especially for and Biden and Obama had a very close relationship. I don't know if you've watched videos and stuff about them, but they had a very genuine, very respectful, loving relationship. So it was a great partnership to watch, and I expect to see more of that same sort of decency and respect, and a strong relationship develop between Harris and Biden. I think it's going to be awesome. So there you go. Oh, Laura, you're asking an interesting question that hasn't been asked before. What country would you choose to spend 14 days before entering the USA if you were traveling from the Schengen area? Well, that's a great question. Where would I go? Okay, if money was no object, I'd probably go to Barbados, somewhere like that. And I would spend 14 days having a holiday. But there are other places you can go. It depends on your financial situation as much as anything, or your traveling situation. You cannot travel through the Schengen area or any of these areas, right? You can't even transit through there right now, right? So So yeah, it depends where you can travel direct to, right? If you can go direct to, for example, Barbados or Mexico or somewhere like that, and just sit on a beach and drink some cocktails, great. That's a great way to spend that 14 days. Um, you know, so, but I don't have a great answer other than that. Um, Oh, public charge rule. That's a great one. Thank you, J Hope for Life. I really want to address this public charge thing because there's confusion about this. The public charge changes that were made about a year ago have been successfully challenged, blocked, and there's been arguments going backwards and forwards, and they've been blocked and then uh, sort of re-implemented and then blocked again, and all sorts of things, right? But the public charge rules that were blocked were add-ons to the existing public charge rules. So people have heard that public charge is blocked, and they assume that the I-134 drinks on you, Laura. Yeah, we'll do that. So people have assumed that the I-134 is not needed anymore. That's not true. In a lot of cases, it is still needed. Public charge, the concept of a new immigrant proving that they won't become a public charge, has always been a part of immigration law for at least 100 years. And so that continues. What was blocked recently is an extension of what's considered taking advantage of public support in consideration of a citizenship application later, or of an adjustment of status application, more likely. And so it's a very nuanced point, but basically only one part of it has been removed, while the rest of it, public charge rules, still exist. So, you don't have to fill in an I-944 anymore if you're doing adjustment of status. The DS-5540 is somewhat used now. It wasn't entirely about public charge, so for that reason I tell people to prepare it. But the I-134 is certainly still used by DV Lottery people. Okay. Okay, getting in a couple more questions here, so I'll stay for a couple minutes more. So Nicoletta is asking, when do I think the Schengen area ban will be lifted? I think it'll probably be at the same time, January 20th. But as we just discussed with Laura, there's a way around that, right? You can travel to another country, so do that. And I've seen, by the way, official guidance from the government, from Travel State Gov, saying all you got to do to get around the ban is go somewhere else for 14 days. So it's no longer considered to be cheating, which it was at one point. They were trying to say you were cheating. So, so that's fine. Brandon Carroll is asking, this is an important point still on public charge. In cases where you have won but don't have the minimum 10K in savings, will you be rejected at interview? How does having a sponsor affect this requirement? And I've also read having insurance is needed now. Right, three or four questions in there. Number one, the 10K that you're referring to is probably a number that you've heard directly or indirectly from me on my blog. It's not a precise number that avoids you being a public charge. 10K per person. It's $10,000 per person. For several years now, I've been talking about that number as being the rough, approximate amount of savings you would need to show to satisfy a consular officer that you wouldn't be a public charge. But it's not a guarantee. And so more guaranteed is to simply show an I-134. So if you've got a family member or friend of a friend who can give you an I-134, it is no obligation on them, and it gives you a guaranteed way of getting through the interview. Having said that, there are people in some countries that aren't asked for an I-134. They're not asked to show savings of $10,000, and they get through anyway. So it's not a guarantee you'll be rejected. It's taken on a case-by-case basis. So if you're highly qualified in some profession, which is very much in demand in the USA, the CEO might sort of look at that and say, yeah, you're going to have no problems. I'm going to approve your case anyway, with or without proof of savings, right? So it's very much a case-by-case thing. Having a sponsor helps if they fill out the I-134. And you've asked about the insurance. The insurance at one point was part of the new public charge rules in the DS 5540. That part was blocked very quickly, I think back in February, and you do not need to have insurance as proof at the time being. That could change, but for now, no, you don't need to have insurance. Okay. Aida, don't use the little accent on the C. There's no problem with that. That's a specific thing. Folfac, doing a great job. Thank you. Costco's saying, are we worried about starting a war about not leaving office? Nobody's worried about a war, really. Trump supporters, God bless them. They're not the brightest folk. Let's be honest. They're not. Again, we're talking uneducated white people, right? So they're not the brightest people, and but they do have guns, and so many of them have talked about, oh, there'll be an uprising, there'll be a war, there'll be, we've got the weapons. Well, lots of people have got weapons, but we behave like adults. So there will be some minor unrest. There always is. But I don't think there's going to be an outright war. And in terms of Trump leaving office, he'll be dragged out if necessary. And I want to see that live streamed. And I will live stream it on my channel if I can get hold of that video of Trump being dragged, kicking and screaming. I'll put it on my channel quite happily. But so I don't think there's a problem there. Ida, I did answer. Oh, there you go. You said thank you there. Casio Watch Piano. What a great name. I've received email from KCC to submit the supporting documents 4th of September. Yeah, 21. Yeah. Is there any particular time to submit the supporting documents, or any time you can submit? You can submit anytime. Right, you won't get interviewed. You won't get scheduled for interview until you've submitted your documents. But your number's not current yet, so you're not slowing down your case at all by not submitting the documents yet. But get to it in the next month or two. Costco loves me. I've got a friend. Mohammed Masriq from Sri Lanka. Case number is 23K. Can you win the 20? Well, you already won the lottery, but can you get an interview is a question. I don't know. You have to wait and see with that number. You just have to wait and see. Simon, yeah, so Galaxy says, so you can start your citizenship application with Joe Biden sign on it in the future. You're exactly right. I did submit my citizenship application online about 6 weeks ago, maybe 7 weeks ago. I'll keep you informed of that journey as that goes through. But you're absolutely right. I could have submitted that a year ago, in which case I would probably already have been a citizen. But I would have to look at Trump's stupid signature for the rest of my life. I didn't want to do that, so I held that back. But a month or so ago, I was pretty convinced Biden was going to win, and so I submitted that application. So it's in. Thanks for thinking of that, Galaxy. Pedro Conclaves. I love your last name, Pedro, because I'm having oh God, an itchy nose again. I'm having a fun time with a friend of mine who shares your last name, who lives in Miami, and she posts the most ridiculous Trump stupid nonsense ever. And I say to her, her name is Gabby, so I'm like, Gabby, this is nonsense. Don't post this crap. It's just stupid. Here's the proof why. So I always love seeing your name because it reminds me of her, a good friend of mine, but unfortunately not one of the brightest people, and actually a Brazilian living in Miami, who should know exactly how bad for her South American, Latin American population Trump has been, but she's still a Trump supporter. Unbelievable. And the man is trying to figure out how he will leave the White House. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, he'll be gone. Okay, so I think we covered it. I think we've covered the questions. Can't see anything else there. Jose is asking, what is an interesting question? What programming languages do you use? I've worked for many years in ERP systems. I do a little bit of Java and Python, but I'm not I'm not coding very much these days. I'm an architect, so I tend to not have the chance to do much development. Haven't done for a while. So that's what I tend to do. It's highly in demand. Java, API, Python, React, Angular, these sort of languages and tools, highly in demand in the USA. So, I should go into, I know about that industry. I should talk about that, but I'd also like to talk about some of the other things. I have lots of ideas for videos I would like to make that would be helpful to you guys. It's just a matter of time. It's just, how much time have I got to talk about these things and make videos? Unfortunately, my job at the moment is very busy, and I expect that to continue. Raid, I'm going to answer your question, Ray Damois. If I were born in a country and I have lived there my whole life, but I don't have the citizenship of the country, which country should I input as country of birth in the DV lottery application form? The country you were born in. It's not a trick question. When they say country of birth, they're not asking you anything else except where you were born, right? Just answer that. It's got the DV lottery process has got nothing to do with citizenship, nothing to do with a passport. It's to do with where you were born, right? So just answer that question honestly. Okay. In the world says, because of Joe Biden, how many people could be selected for DV 2022? Joe Biden won't make that decision. No president makes that decision. There's a process that they'll go through. We don't know yet whether DV 2022 will be a high selectee number year or a low selectee number year. DV 2021 is a high selectee number year. So usually we get about 2 years, roughly speaking, we get 2 years with high selectees and then followed by 2 years of low selectees, roughly, and it sort of goes that way all the time. But we'll see. 100,000 is about the number which would be ideal. That and below is normally okay. 130,000, that's too many. And unless a lot of people decide not to continue for whatever reason. Zipporah is asking, do I think Trump will succeed in challenging Biden's victory? Not a hope in hell. No, he's got no chance. He's got nothing to say. He's just got to get the hell out of there now. So no, nothing. No hope. Can you can post videos on TikTok? Yeah. I do enjoy TikTok. I have to say, I may take up your suggestion, but I'd have to delete a couple of dopey videos I've already got there that I did to please my daughter, because they're embarrassing. But yeah, maybe I should do that. We'll see. All right, guys, I'll call that a day. Thank you for all your questions, your input today. I hope that was useful. It went very long today. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, back to the point. Joe Biden's a winner. Trump is going. Life is returning to normal. America is going to be a great country again, and for all the right reasons. And so welcome immigrants. Welcome to America, and come and make the country even better. All right, guys. Cheers, everyone. Have a good day. All right. Bye-bye.